Yeah, drink beer. Anyway, today is a message that a lot of you guys might have heard before, but if you hadn't, I hope that God speaks to you in a really cool way. It may be something that you've never really thought about. We do this series in the month of October. Right now, you're starting to see decorations and things like that. Everybody's talking about our trunk or treat and Halloween coming up, and starting to see toilet paper in people's yard. That's only in the South, I think. But anyway, that whole talk of the demonic side and all these things, and it's been kind of cast that Halloween is not a good time of year or anything like this. I want you to know that Halloween is another day. It's a day. It's how we live it. Is what matters. It's how we go about addressing it that what matters. So we started this series, and it's about the facts of everybody. Everybody has fear. I don't care who you are. I don't care how tough you are, how big and bad you are. We all have fear. Y'all have been around here long enough that you know my top three: snakes, needles, cemeteries. Don't do cemeteries. I'll go and do a funeral and all that. That's usually in the daytime. That's good. It's that cemeteries at night. They all dead. It ain't like they're gonna chase you down or nothing. But it's just something about that. How many people have ever gone into a seminary? Seminary. Hey, that's the drugs talking. Y'all may hear some new words today. But anyway. The cemetery and stuff, and you see the fog and all that, and you've seen all the scary movies and all that stuff, and it kind of gives us this idea about the cemetery, that place being scary. I'll tell you a quick story. When I grew up in Crockett County, and my dad and one of his buddies owned a coon dog together, and so they were big time coon hunters, and I love to go and hang out and just grab a hold of Dad's pants leg, and off we went. And I was about 10 years old at this time, and we were hunting in this area that I never wanted to go because it was an old Civil War cemetery out in the middle of the woods. Out in the middle of the woods, like deep in the middle of the woods. And we let loose, and you let the dogs out and they go, and you do this at night, by the way. And back in those days, I sound like I'm old. Hush. They had what they call carbine lights. And it shot a little flame out, and it wasn't very bright. Let's put it that way. And so we had those, and sometimes they'd go out and all this stuff, and they usually went out at the wrong time. As we're walking through, the dogs begin to bark. And so that means that they have caught the scent of a coon, and here we go. And Dad and Mr. Danny had some really good dogs, very expensive dogs. And so we're going down through there, and they're barking, and they're going, and Dad said, "You know where they're headed." I'm like, "Ah!" And so the closer we get, the dogs are getting louder, and all of a sudden, as we're probably less than 25, 30 yards from the cemetery, there is a scream that lets out that sounded like a woman that was being tortured. And the dogs quit barking. The only thing you could hear was my heart. And Dad's like, "Would you please get off my leg?" And so as silence came, we're sitting there and we hear something running. And I'm like, something's got to give. It was the dogs. The dogs went by us, going to the truck. Now, you got to understand Mr. Danny. Mr. Danny he is very dry humor and everything. He goes, "Ain't no sense of us staying here. Let's go back to the truck." And when we got back, the dogs were in the truck like, where y'all been? And so later on, we figured out that there had been some panther sightings in the Crockett County area, and we said it to that. It didn't matter. I was way too close to a cemetery, and there was somebody screaming. So I'm out, So the fear of cemeteries, that's kind of where it came from when I was growing up. But to let you know that today, I mean, that you come to church, you want good news and all this stuff. Today, you're one day closer to being in the cemetery. Yay! Isn't that awesome news? That's what you wanted to hear today, right? Hey, well, guess what? The day you were born was the first day you began to die. The thing about it is we look at death a lot of times in a fearful way. We look at it in a fearful way. We look at it, there's nobody signing up. Hey, I want to die today. Actually, I did the other night. I was like, Jesus, please come back and get me. But the thing about it is we have this thing in our mind, in our heart, that nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to, sign up and do that. Even if you're a believer, and you have Christ in your heart, and you know the promise. You know the promise that when we pass from this earth, we have eternal life in heaven with Christ. And they say literally that the streets are lined with gold, and Christ has been building a mansion for you. But for some reason or another, we want all these things here on earth. I mean, and I understand, loved ones. I couldn't imagine being without my children and my wife and my friends and you guys. But Christ says, this is just a moment. Here on this earth is just a moment. And the eternal side of it is where we should desire to be and hang out. I never will forget, Dr. Adrian Rogers was talking about a buddy of his that was in the hospital and he was having heart failure. And he said that they when he flatlined. And so they shocked him and brought him back. And Dr. Adrian Rogers turned around and looked at him and said, if that happens to me, don't do that. He said, because I might possibly be dancing in the streets of gold at that moment, and I'm going to be upset if you bring me back here. And that's the thing. What a way of looking at it. What a way of looking at it. And so, and by the way, I've had experiences. My mother was actually dead, flatlined for over 20 minutes without oxygen. And they come in, they shocked her, and on the fourth shock, she come back, and y'all have seen my mother, so she's still alive. Oh, is she alive? Anyway, but the thing about it is that was the first thing that I asked her when she was where you could talk, because she was in the hospital for quite a while after that. But I said, did you see anything white, anything glowing? Was you hanging out with Jesus or anything like that? She said, I was asleep. And I think personally in that there was a purpose behind that. I think it was 100% purpose of what she went through, and it was basically for my dad. My dad came very close to Christ through all that, and I think God used my mom through that. And so it wasn't for her to tell her story that she was 20 minutes in heaven or anything like that. It was a purpose behind that. But you've heard stories of people saying that in heaven and how amazing it was, and they come back, get shot, come back to life. I don't disagree with any of that. Wasn't there. Can't say anything about that. I wasn't there. So the thing that we get really caught up in is this whole fact of dying. No matter who you are, we struggle with that. And if you say that you're not afraid of it, you're probably picking a way that you're going to die. How many of you, if you die, you want to die in your sleep at night? Yeah, see there? How many of you want to get hit by a semi hauling hogs? See, I should have known. Never mind. But we don't get that choice a lot of times. Nor do we get to pick the day. Chris, you got me a tombstone that I can look at real quick? I want to look at something right here. This is a pretty cool tombstone, except it's kind of blank, isn't it? A lot of times we see on a tombstone, the things that you can remember is probably a name. I know that we got some tombstones around here that are very, 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 very old. I can't even pronounce this poor guy's name. That's maybe why he died. No, let's use my name. Let's use Morris. That's one of the first things you see when you walk up in a graveyard. You see the name of who's on the stone there. Okay. What's some other things that you see on a tombstone? Dates. And see, there's two key dates here. There's two key dates. The one that when you're born, and the one when you die. I never forget. I did a funeral, and we was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, when I say nowhere, it did not pick up on GPS. Okay, and I'm in there, and I'm walking around and looking at these tombstones, and there was a tombstone in there that was made out of black marble, and it had a '57 Chevy etched on it. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy. And then just down from it was the one with a coon dog on it. If that tells you how far back we were, all right? And so there was really cool stuff on it. Then you may see a picture of someone, a little small picture of them. You may see the fact, like, rest in peace. May see a scripture. And the thing about it is a tombstone is basically leaving you with that little bit of information, and that's not a whole lot of information. But today, what I want to explain to you, one of the most important things on a tombstone is that little mark right there. It's the dash. It's the dash between the day you were born and the day you died. See, you have no control over the day you were born. You don't. You had mom and dad and all that. They had a little bit to do with it. But after that, you didn't have a choice of who your mom and dad were. There's not a lot of choices that you have when it comes to this tombstone. You were born into your given last name. You were born on a day because that's just the way it laid out. Then you don't really get a choice on the day that you die either. But there's one thing that we can kind of control on a tombstone, and that's the dash. It's how we live our life. And the thing about it is we have control in that. We have choice in that. And you may sit here today, you may sit there and go, Andy, well, man, that's kind of rough, because there's a lot of us right now. There's nobody signing up to die in a couple of weeks. Or, I remember us doing the 30 days to live, 1 month to live. Y'all remember that study? Have y'all read that book? There's an amazing book by Carrie Shook called 1 Month to Live. And there were so many people given this opportunity to say, if you had 30 days left here on this earth, if you was told that in 30 days you'd be out, would you change how you live? Would you make any adjustments in your life? And the thing about it is people begin to talk about, well, I spend more time with my family. I might not work as much. I might take my wife out on a date more. I might take the time to help someone in need. And all these things begin to change in these 30 days. And the question is what if we lived like that we only had 30 days to live all of our life? What if we made the choice to say, you know what? I've got today. And today I'm going to live it. I'm going to live it for Christ. I'm going to live it the way I've been taught and raised and the love that I have for Him and the things I do. I'm going to do that today for Christ. I understand, and I want you to know that I understand that our jobs, the things that we do for a living, are very important. Very important. They buy your food, they buy your clothes, they buy so many things. You tithe with it. You do so much stuff with our jobs. Understand that. We go to school so we can get a better job. We go and study for hours and hours and hours to get a better job. It's kind of how the world has shaped us. But what if we took a graph and found out how much time we spent working, how much time we spent sleeping, how much time we spent hobbying, I think that's a word, compared to how many things that we do for Christ and for our family and serving Him. And you're doing that right now. I can see you. Your brain's running right now. You're thinking about, well, man, I worked 80-something hours last week, or I did this, or I did that. The thing about it is, guys, is we only get one chance with that dash. And the Bible says that our life here on earth is nothing but a vapor. It's here and gone. And I want to ask you this: when you're gone, when you've got one of these fine tombstones that is pretty hilarious that we can go and pick that out now, we can go and look at a coffin to be put in and stuff. Say it's a good business. I don't know. I couldn't do that business. I'm not going. I want you to put me in that box. Not going to do it. All right. So here's the deal. We go and we do all this and we look at this. What is your tombstone going to say? Your last name. That's good. All right. What is it going to say about you? It can't. Yeah, I would hope that that's not enough room. That he was a guy that loved the Lord. He was a guy that served the Lord. He was a guy that loved his family. He was a guy that. When we leave here, we're going to leave behind our dash. How we lived our life. how we impacted people through Christ, how we impacted people through our kindness, how we impacted people through our sense of humor, through whatever. But you're going to be left, the only thing you're going to be able to leave behind is a dash, your legacy. Wow. Check out the pie chart. Work takes up half. Religion, which I think is kind of funny, but anyway, religion takes up a very small part. Family, fun. That's kind of scary, isn't it? For our whole life. That's what it winds up being. So am I telling you to go out and quit your job? No. But what if at work you live it for Christ? What about in your hobbies? You live for Christ. What about in commitments? I like that. You live for Christ. The thing about it is, guys, it's about our dash. It's about the dash to the bottom line. How are we living that? Let me read you a verse of Scripture real quick, and it's in Psalms 90:12. It said, "Teach us to number our days and recognize how few they are. Help us to spend them as we should." The thing about it is, we feel like every day you wake up, there's nobody that wakes up that day and says, you know what, I might die today. If you did, you'd probably live under a cloud. You probably have a pretty gloom look about you. I know we have several police officers that go to church here. When they wake up every morning, there's a thought process that they may encounter death that day. That's a scary thought. We have people in the medical field that see death every day. But the thing about it is when we wake up, we feel like, man, we got all kinds of time. We got all kinds of time to live. We got all kinds of time to do this. And I love this about it. We think, you know what? I'll get to that later. You know, I'll get my life right later. So today, if I told you that you had 30 days left here on earth, would you change your life right now? Would you change the way you live your life? And if you said yes, why are you waiting? Why are you waiting? You know, I had a friend, well, I say a friend, it was an acquaintance that I met here. And this lady battled cancer, I think 4 times. And I'm not talking about like a little spot of cancer. I'm talking about brain, lung, stomach, and bone. Those 4. And overcome 4 times. The last time that she got cancer, she had given her life to Christ. She'd given her life to Christ before she went to the doctor, and just this amazing transformation had taken place in her life. And she come back and she told me on that Sunday I saw her, she said, well, I knew something was coming. She said, I'd been having some stomach problem. And she said, I knew what it was, but she says, no big deal. And I said, what's going on? She said, I have a tumor, and it's cancer. And I said, well, what's the actions? What are you going to do and stuff? And she was in her mid to upper 50s, and she said, I'm going to live my life. She said, I'm going to live my life to the fullest, but I'm going to live it serving God because I've given Him my heart now, and it's totally different now. And I'm like, okay, that's cool right now in this conversation that you're all focused, but as we get closer to this death thing, surely you're going to wig out. 2 days before she died, I sat down with her, and we planned her memorial service. And her not knowing that she was going to die in 2 days, and me not knowing, but she had gotten really, really bad. I've never sat down across from somebody as we talked about a memorial service and laughed as much as we did. The pain that she was in, and laughed as much as she did. She goes, man, do you know in a couple of days I'm going to be hanging out with Jesus? And that you sit there, as a pastor, I sit there knowing that that's the truth and stuff, but that's the way she was looking at it. And she said, and we had a memorial service here, and she says, I got some instructions for you. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. She was a pretty tough lady. She said, when you get them all in the room, all my family, she said, my family comes from a very rough background. She said, there's going to be people here that are rough, that don't know Jesus, that may be the first time they've ever walked in the doors. She said, I want you to stand guard somebody back there, and when they come in, I want you to close the door. And she said, I want you to share Christ with them. I want you to tell them the difference that Christ has been in my life. She had a video that she had spoke to people about. Christ changed her life. And when death come knocking, she went running. She was ready. She ran towards it and was excited about it. So you sit there and say, well, Andy, that's kind of morbid. That's kind of weird. Guys, did you remember what I said at the beginning? Today, you're one day closer to that day. Now, it may be 1,000 days. It may be 500 days. It may be 5 days. I don't know. You don't know. So the question is how do we live our life? How do we live out our dash daily? The thing about it is we've got to quit thinking like we've got all the time in the world. And we've got to start focusing on the things that are taking place right now around us. You may have a child that, they're going through a stage. They'll get better when they get after teenage. No, they won't. No. Focus with that child now. Spend time with that child. Well, when the kids leave home, me and the wife will have time to hang around and talk and go on dates. No. Get you a babysitter and go on dates. The time is now. There's people probably in this very room that have stories of losing a loved one, and you sitting there going, I wish I woulda. And there's nothing we can do about that. The only thing we can do about is today. Right now. If you got a loved one that you may not be on speaking terms, if something happens to you or them, you're going to go back and say, man, I wish I woulda. Don't go back and wish I woulda. Swallow your pride and go to them and tell them, man, I love you. You may have a friend. You may have a relationship. Take care of business now. Allow Christ to use you in a mighty way. It's a challenge. But the pain that you're going to feel when that person is gone is going to be one of the roughest things you've ever gone through. I never will forget that both of my grandmothers died with Alzheimer's. I think I said that right. Sometimers. Both of them had it, and I never will forget my first grandma, the first one that got it. I got to hang out with her a little bit, and she kind of went kind of quick. My mom's mom, who we thought as soon as my grandfather died, she'd be gone, because she couldn't live without him. She lived for 7 years. I think she got healthier, but she had no mind. And I used the excuse to say, well, she don't know me. She don't know me. And I don't want to go, and sit there and stuff, and nursing homes smell bad, and every excuse under the sun. I never will forget, as I sat inside the funeral home, and they began to talk about her, and I was going to have to speak about her. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because I was too busy to go and spend time with her. As many times as she had changed my diapers, she had taken care of me, she had bought me things, she had loved me when nobody else would love me. And that's a hard thing to live with. And all it took is an hour of my day to go and say hi. Even if she didn't know it. It has set me at peace. Don't let things like that go to the grave. If you're in a battle with your spouse, don't go there. Get it handled today. If you're in a battle with a sibling or a child, get it handled today. Because you're not promised tomorrow. Now, I've told you all this, and I've said all this, and everybody's sitting there going, I got to go tell them I love them, all this stuff, and you're like, man, I really don't want to be here today. There's a reason why you're here today. There's purpose behind this. This is the main purpose behind this. Right now, your dash may read one thing, and it may not be the right thing. It may not be what you desire out of your dash. But here's what I'm telling you. We serve a God that brings forth life change. There was a man in the Bible named Saul. Saul was this guy that his one goal in life, his one mission and purpose in life was to destroy all Christians. To either put them under arrest or kill them. He was basically your biblical day Hitler when it comes to Christians. And Saul was a very great leader. He knew what he was doing when it come to work. He knew his job well. He was with some of his guys, and they were going down this road to the next town to take care of some Christians that they'd got information that was there, and he said, we'll go take care of this. And as he began this journey down the road, you may have heard that Christ appeared to him through a bright and shining light. The light was so bright that it blinded him, put him on the ground. But the crazy thing about it is the guys that were with him did not see the light, did not get blinded by the light. Saul hit the ground and he heard the voice of God and said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Saul, you need to change. And at that moment when that light hit him, there was change that took place because he went from seeing and went from being this warrior, to being weak and on the ground and blind. To the point where he couldn't even walk. He laid there for a minute until his buddies got him up and they carried him on into that town. There, God began to speak to him and his name was changed. He went from being Saul to Paul. And that's the life change that you've come here today looking for. Because right now your dash may be a Saul dash. You may be living your life for the world. You may be, church is so far away from you. A relationship with Christ is so far away in your life right now. But here's what I'm telling you. We serve a God that life change takes place in a moment. Cool thing about Paul, he wound up writing over half of the New Testament. He died doing everything and anything he could sharing the gospel of Christ. A man that once killed and beat Christians. To the day he died, he was sharing the gospel of Christ and the love of Christ. Now that's life change. So right now you may be sitting here going, man, my dash looks rough. Man, my dash is, Andy, you just don't know. Man, my dash is dark. It's rough. It's bad. I'm just this evil person. Well, today I want you to understand something. Through the grace of Christ, through the blood that he shed on the cross, there's life change. There's life change. And you can go from a Saul to a Paul. Not based on what you can do, based on what he can do. And that's why we have to live the day by day. Christ has something for you today. Are you willing to accept that?